Hi everyone, I wanted to do a video on the psoas. Yesterday I posted a little bit of an explanation on the psoas muscle, what it looks like, why it's important, and some of the issues, some of the symptoms that a compressed or compromised psoas might present with. And a lot of people were like, yes, tell me what to do. I need to know more about this. I have all these issues and I want to talk about it. So for anyone who has not followed me for a long time, I have been a body worker and sports therapist for 14, almost 15 years, and I integrated a lot of functional movement even into my career as an athlete and a trainer. Like, we were always looking at things from a very functional, restorative, balancing perspective. So looking at the fascia, looking at the nervous system, looking how all of these systems like kind of tie together, and not just looking at things in isolation, which is a very Western-based way to look at things, right? So this is a huge passion of mine. I haven't talked about these kinds of things in a long time, going through my own health journey and being out of the gym and not being able to move presented my own barriers to things like fascia and a lot of new pain conditions and posture conditions and stuff. And now that I am through my healing journey and back into the gym and able to move, like, I'm more passionate about this stuff than ever, because I'm also kind of taking my own body through all of this as a beginner, except for I have 19 years of experience in the space. So it's kind of cool. I'm getting to be like my own case study of looking at someone as a beginner myself, but then also as the professional. So I've just felt kind of called to bring some of this content back to you guys, and it's really cool to see that everyone's excited about hearing about this kind of stuff. One second, I gotta put my little dog, go on. Oh my gosh, hang on. So my dog Izzy had an amputation last week and she needed help up on the couch. Anyway, back to the psoas. So most people know about like the foam roller, and they know about things for their back and posture. When we think of, if you say the word posture, most people do this instantly, right? They automatically pull those shoulders back and they're thinking about posture. A lot of people know, yeah, roll your back, it's great. And maybe even they've heard trigger points or something like that, right? The problem is the entire posterior and anterior chain, like the entire front and back of our bodies, get completely segmented out. It's like, this is the back of your body, this is the front of your body, and the front of your body gets completely neglected. And this is in stretching, this is in massage therapy, this is just as a whole in these different industries. So body workers will rarely touch the chest. They really never, ever, ever touch the abdomen or get under the rib cage into the intercostals or address the diaphragm or the intestines. And that comes with a lot of problems. One of the big ones being that not only are your chest muscles generally hyper contracted with our posture and forward head and always sitting at desk and stuff, but then here, our psoas muscle, and I'll make sure to put some diagrams and stuff in this as well so you can see the anatomy chart of what this looks like. But basically your psoas muscle starts about right here. It's a big girthy muscle and it crosses through your pelvic bowl, basically your pelvis, and connects to the front of your hips. So hip extension, contraction, it's used in a lot of like major movements, right? The problem is, as I'm sitting here, this muscle is kind of contracted. When I sit all day and I do this, the more I come forward like this, the shorter that muscle gets, right? Okay, cool. Not only is my body like sinking into this position, I'm training my body to be in this position, and it's pulling everything out of alignment and causing everything to be out of balance. But when I go to actually stand up, guess what? That really short and tight muscle right there is going to pull my lower lumbar spine, and it's going to cause a lot of pain. That is where things like sciatica and slip and bulging discs come in, right? Because it's actually pulling those vertebrae forward. So you'll see people that have posture like this, but then they also have this crazy lower curve as well with this. And then they go and they're trying to like pick up something heavy, or not even heavy, say a bag of cat food, it weighs 10 pounds, but that muscle is so contracted and so short. Then you try to stand up, but it's fighting you. Then you try to activate a muscle to actually lift and engage, and you've got compensation, weakness, imbalance, and disaster. And that is a huge reason that people get slipped and bulging discs generally from doing virtually nothing. Like, it's never I was lifting this huge heavy thing. It's like I went to reach for my toothbrush and this happened. It's because you get hypercontraction, a muscle much shorter than it should be, and then that causes the antagonist muscle to tighten up, trying to pull it back. So you'll get stiffness here. You're like, oh, my lower back's hurting all the time. It's so stiff. And then this is where it gets even worse. People intuitively do the worst thing possible. They stretch forward. They're like, oh, my lower back is so tight. It's so stiff. And so they stretch forward. Your lower back is tight and stiff because it is desperately trying to fight those super tight psoas muscles that are clamping down and pulling you forward. Even if you don't sit all day, you have a factory job, you're on your feet, you lift and you exercise. I would say 90% of the time, people are doing their exercises with this same dynamic. Something's overactive and something else is underactive, and they're creating compensatory patterns that just keep compounding their pain and then eventually leading to pretty substantial injuries, like a torn tendon or, a complete blowout of their lower back. It's very counterintuitive, but it's very simple and logical if you think about it, that if we're like this all the time, we need to take our body consistently back the other direction, okay? Consistently, and not just for a moment, but actually release the tightened muscles and strengthen the ones that are overextended. This goes the exact same for the chest and the upper back as it does here in the lower back. So what I always have people do here, again, they want to stretch like this and they're like reaching over. I'm like, you're in that position 90% of the day. In fact, 90% of the night too, because our pillows do this. They push us forward, right? So we got to start taking things the opposite direction. It looks like opening the chest here, looking up and back. You can do this numerous times through the day. You can grab onto a door frame. All these different things that you can do, right? Back to the psoas, it's a little harder. You can certainly do some exercises and some twists, but it's really, really, really deep. So you're going to feel your abs, you're going to feel your hip flexors, you're going to feel even maybe your intercostals, the muscles in between on your ribs, far before you're going to actually get to the psoas. It takes a lot of intention and guidance to get you into some positions to stretch that very well. And even stretching, again, it's so tight and it's so bound up and there's so many trigger points in there. A lot of times trying to stretch a muscle that's that constricted just makes it clamp up even more. That's why I always say when you're doing stretches, it's best to do it on a warm body. That's why yoga is so powerful. And with your psoas, using tools like this is so, so, so important. So just a disclaimer, this is not medical advice. Tread cautiously because more is not better with this kind of stuff. Like, I'm just making an educational video telling you guys about this stuff, but it really is best to consult with someone, even just virtually over Zoom, to get an assessment to make sure what you're releasing and what you're strengthening is super relevant to you. So PT, sports or massage therapist, somebody at least once to make sure you're doing the right thing. But if you do want to venture into it, or you have a tight psoas because you've seen somebody and you're looking for another way to work on it, this is the tool. I, again, over 19 years, have gotten so creative with so many different things, trying to create this dynamic. So this piece of equipment is worth its weight in gold. I've used broom handles, I have used dog toys, I have used the craziest things trying to get kind of this size and shape to be able to go to my psoas. But this one already has it done, and it's also adjustable. So everybody's going to be different in terms of what they need. You can slide it in or out, I will use this at various different, like I'll even use it there because it will kind of stretch out and activate the deeper core muscles that can get tight. This is the width you really want to be for true psoas work. So it's kind of a little bit of a pain, but I would say probably, yeah, right there. So you want it to kind of be like that far from your hip bones. So you take your hip bones, you come in like about 2 inches, and you'll kind of feel that muscle. You can also lay on the ground, palpitate, like put your hands on your hip bone, like there's the very peak of my hip bone coming over. If I was laying down to find and to feel it activate, I would be here. And when I go to lift my leg, you'll instantly feel that muscle pop up. So that's a really good way to kind of find where it is. To work on it, just put this thing down on the ground. I just finished a workout, so this is a great time for me to work on that because I did a lot of glutes and lower back and abs. And so I'm just gonna come right over it. It's kind of hard to get in the position. There goes my mic. Okay, hopefully you can see and hear still. And I'm basically, this is actually just a tiny bit too wide for me, like now that I'm on it. But I'm just gonna sit here and breathe. And I'm gonna make sure I'm not doing this because this is the same old posture, right? I wanna get up. I wanna elongate my spine. I wanna be having some spinal extension. And I could even come up here like this if I wanted to take it an extra little notch. I'll come over to one side. Once I get a spot that's like, it's always my right side for me. And for most people, their right side will be tighter because of driving, you know, always using that foot and that hip. So I'll get there in a nice, intense spot, which is like, oh, right there for me. And I'm gonna deep belly breathe into it. I'm actually using my breath and my muscle to push my body away from it and then relaxing and collapsing into it. Oh my goodness, I've not done this in a minute. Oh, it's intense, you guys. Like I have done this type of release on literally some of the strongest, toughest athletes on the planet. And this kind of work can make a grown man cry. It's just very, very, very intense. You don't need to go intense like that, but even barely touching it, because it's a muscle that's so neglected and it's so deep, it never really gets any stimulation. It can kind of take the breath out of you just because it's not something you're used to feeling. But you don't, more again is not better. You don't need to be super aggressive with this, and you don't need to mash around. You need to find the spot, breathe, relax, breathe, relax, breathe, relax into it. And that breath is really helping to move the fascia around it. You don't want to, again, just go in and try to mash into one singular muscle by itself. You want to be creating functionality around it and movement around it. So working with the breath is really, really, really helpful. So I always like to do opposite muscles. So after I do that, then I'm going to kind of stretch out my lower back, kind of go into some child's pose here. Same thing, breathing into it. And I already did about 10-15 minutes of stretches after my workout and worked on a lot of those extra muscles anyway. So just start with these, work on a little tiny bit at a time, and this will probably take a huge load off of your hips and your lower back and probably give you a lot of relief. Just don't do too much at one time. And I will put the link to this and some of my other favorite tools for fascia and muscle release in the comments below. If you guys have any questions, reach out, comment, and I will be happy to answer.